This is Barrels and Barrels, a bourbon and baseball podcast. With your hosts, Brendan Spinner, Michael Burns, and Kyle Rose.
And welcome into another episode of Barrels and Barrels, a bourbon and baseball podcast, episode 9. And Mikey and I hit 9. Okay, Michael Scott. How's it going tonight, Mikey?
Well, do you know, I got a little bit of nice weather outside today compared to the freaking cold that we had this weekend.
That's funny.
Waiting for some baseball news. We need some of those baseball reporters to put out some news and sign some papers. And let's get this moving, guys.
Yeah, we're in the offseason now. This is technically, our second off-season episode because we had the World Series recap. But this is the first one that'll primarily and predominantly be about the off-season. So this is episode 9. As always, I am Brandon Spinner alongside Michael Burns. Kyle is on assignment tonight, so you will not hear Kyle's voice. It's actually his wife's birthday here on November 22nd as we record.
Birthday.
So happy birthday to his wife, and that is why Kyle is on assignment. He's also doing some background stuff for us as well. So, as always, we welcome everybody in by thanking a few of our listeners. Want to give a big shout out to our boy, Ben, Bourbon in the Burrow. He just completed a trifecta Spartan race, right? Like, that's his third one of the deal.
Ben, the Iron Man.
Yeah, what a stud. Big shout out to him. Also want to shout out Daniel. You may know him as Bourbon_Hunt. Mikey, we've got more mystery samples. So we're going to have another.
That was so much fun.
Yeah, we're going to have more fun at some point. So I got to get those sent out to you. But thank you to Daniel. Yeah, or poison.
Or poison.
I've got the answer sheet right here. It is sealed, and I will be giving that to Kyle so he can let us know whenever we do have that episode. So big thank you to Daniel. And if you want to send us some poison, if you want to send us some samples, reach out to us via Instagram, Facebook, whatever it is, and we'd gladly take them and try them. Another shout out to Kristen Swilly. Last week we asked for reviews and ratings. Kristen is the only one who's reviewed us so far. We do have a couple of ratings, but we would like to hear some reviews as well. So if you could do that, please, wherever that is, YouTube, Spotify, or on Apple Podcasts, please just leave us a review, what you like, what you don't like, what you'd like to see in the future. A big thank you to you. And then Tiffany Gibson, part of the Bourbon Thieves. I helped her out with a bottle for her brother, and she posted a picture of us and our stickers. We've got stickers now, Mike. We have officially made it. We've got stickers. So if you guys want some stickers, let us know. Reach out to us. We've got them for $2. We gotta get some of that money back. But if you'd want one, reach out to us. Also, last thing, big news today, Michael. We've made
What's
it.
That?
500 followers.
All right.
So that's a milestone. I mean, we're a young podcast. Big thank you to all 500 of you who follow us. So cheers to you. And always you can follow us on Instagram at Barrels N Barrels Pod. Again, Barrels, the letter N, Barrels Pod. Mikey, you're on Instagram too. Where can we find you? For those of you who aren't watching on YouTube and can see it right under your name.
I'm at BNB_Burns.
And I am...
Usually most people call me, except Brandon, who calls me Mikey.
Mikey. I don't know where that started. I called you Michael for so long, and then we started the podcast, and I don't know why. Mikey is what popped into my head. And you can find me on Instagram at whiskey_weather. So we are a bourbon and baseball podcast. This week, we're not even doing bourbon. We're doing a whiskey. Which a lot of people.
We're not doing bourbon? I was like, we're not.
We planned this. We're drinking. So for those of you who don't know, not all whiskey is bourbon, but all bourbon is whiskey. I think I said that right. Right?
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
You didn't mix it up like walk-offs and whiskey.
Yeah, I'll make a mistake here sooner or later. But this week we're actually going to be doing a rye. This is one that you may have been seeing on social media pop up a lot more lately. I saw it earlier in the year, but it's really starting to gain steam. This is called Bushwood Spirits. It's a beautiful bottle. This is going to be their Stillwater Rye. Mike, have you seen a lot of this popping up on Instagram and social media lately?
I did. And it was so cool to get your hands on a bottle when it was everyone else and popping up. And it's what's real cool about it. What's the top there?
Yeah, so
the bottle?
the stopper. So they've got a couple of different bottles out there. They've got, I think, 6 or 7 different offerings, or they'll have a 6th coming out here. But the stopper, it is a beautiful. It's a golf ball, and it's, I believe,
All their stoppers are, aren't they? Or
yeah,
most
all
of
their
them are?
stoppers are golf balls, but this one is glass, or I think it's some sort of glass or crystal. I mean, it's a heavy duty. It's got some weight to it. That one dude, Ryan, on Instagram, you know how he does the bottle slams? He slammed this one so hard that it shattered. So
The bottle did?
No, the stopper.
Oh, the topper?
The I guess the bottom edge of the topper, or cork, if you want to call it. But this is Stillwater Rye. This is a 6-year single barrel rye, 95 proof. This is batch 1. It's a black label. You may hear the clanking. They actually have a little charm hanging off the golf ball. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, or you're listening here on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, there's a little charm on it. It's got the Bushwood logo, which is basically John Daly holding a flag, which has the number 19 on it, because the number 19 in golf symbolizes the 19th hole, which means the party hole. It's when you're drinking after you play your round of 18. But on the other side of the medallion, it says, "Be the ball." And that is their slogan, which they use to say, stay in the moment. And that's what they say the spirit of Bushwood is to be the ball and to stay in the moment. So Stillwater Rye, I looked this up. It is a mash bill of 51 rye, 45% corn, and 4% malted barley. So it's just over
Say that one more time. I was looking for it. I couldn't find the mash bill. What was it?
51 rye, 45 corn, 4 malted barley, which is a little different when it comes to rye. Usually when you have a rye, it's really high in the rye percentage. This has more of that corn that you would not usually see in a rye. So 51-45 is a pretty even split, just enough to call it that rye, because it has to be 51% or higher.
Right. I'm surprised it's not just called they didn't just call it a high rye whiskey.
Yeah.
Rather than a straight rye.
So it's Stillwater Rye, crafted and bottled by Bushwood Spirits in Stanford, Kentucky. I mentioned a couple of different offerings that they have. They've got the Front 9, which is a 7-year black label bourbon. We actually have that one, which we will review at some point in the future as well. They also have a 6-year white label for that Front 9, but that 6-year white label is very, very rare and hard to find. They've got a Back 9, which is their 15-year bourbon, and then there's the Long Ball, which is a 6-year bourbon as well. Soon to come, they've got Cannonball, a spiced whiskey, and they also have a vodka offering, which is called Looper Vodka. But we have that Stillwater Rye. It's a premium straight rye whiskey, as I mentioned. Batch 1.
So how long has Bushwood been around?
So they actually came around in October of 2021. That's when they officially were launched. But founder Brad Carpenter came up with the idea about 10 years ago. I think he started it 10 years ago. And after putting everything together, they finally launched last October. So the distillery itself has been around officially for about a year, but the idea behind it is about a decade old. And when it comes to the Stillwater Rye, they said it's inspired by our love for the Monterey Peninsula and the unrivaled beauty of Stillwater Cove. So they crafted Stillwater Rye, offering to celebrate the home of one of the greatest golf experiences in the world. And for those of you who aren't golfers, they're describing Pebble Beach. And Pebble Beach, one of the most famed golf courses here in the United States. I have not played it. I would love to someday, but you got to know somebody. So
I wonder if Pebble Beach is popular either just in the golf world, but I know it just from, going to Applebee's as a kid, and that was always the title, Pebble Beach on all the golf games. If they chose a course to be default, it was Pebble Beach.
So it is a huge golf course. For those of you who don't play golf, it's probably one of the most beautiful. It's right there on the ocean, right in Monterey. So that is what this is actually.
I'm sure my ball would find the ocean.
every time. So that is what this Stillwater Rye is based off of. We can crack it open, give it a pour. There's kind of a cool name behind the name Bushwood as well. And Bushwood, it's kind of the pop culture synonymous for the dysfunctional country club in that golf cult classic Caddyshack. You've seen the movie, I'm sure, right?
Yes, I have. I'm not a big movie buff, but I have seen Caddyshack.
So that's where the name Bushwood came from Brad Carpenter, who's the CEO and founder. So Stillwater Rye, it's to go after rye drinkers and non-rye drinkers. They said it's pretty good when you make it into a drink as well. It says a rare mash bill in the rye category, which we already went over, being that it's on the lower percentage when it comes to rye for normal ryes. Normally they're around 75 to 80%, I think. When you look,
I thought not like 90, 95.
Sometimes, yeah. I think usually it's 75 or greater. So this has more of that corn to it, which you would
interested to try it because of that.
Which would generally lend to a sweeter smell and palate. What are you getting on the nose there at first blush?
My first nose, I'm getting the sweet smell.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting a darker fruit smell to it, but as I go back in for a second or third sniff, I get more of that rye pepper that you typically get out of a rye, that spice. How about you?
I got cinnamon right off the bat, and that like a sweet cinnamon smell, almost like it's right at the top of my mind because my grandma was doing it when I was out hunting the last week. But she was boiling water with cinnamon sticks in it, and that's what the first blush to me smelled like. I get that darker fruit. Almost.
I gotta ask, what did she do with cinnamon boiling water?
It's just like an aroma, like a potpourri kind of deal.
Okay.
Why?
I think you're cooking with it or doing something else. What are you doing?
We've got a cabin out in the middle of the woods, and
you distilling distilling something of it?
My uncle may or may not be doing some of that on his own, but he may not.
As long as you send me some, I'm fine.
You could probably degrease a car. I mean, he doesn't do any of that. But so on the nose, I've got that. It's kind of a plum cinnamon. I don't really get the rye peppery nose. Maybe towards the back end of it, but I certainly get that sweetness that you mentioned on the nose. I see that you have sampled it. I had a little bit of a drink of it earlier as I was playing with Legos. You still play with Legos?
My child's Legos. Not any Lego set, but we just build random stuff. I don't have kits like you've been playing with.
I've got like it's got the 18 plus on it, so like it's
what?
it's just for adults. I'm not going to reveal what it is yet because I think I'm going to do an Instagram reel of what it was, but I think you got the Snapchat from me to kind of give away that clue. But so I was sipping on it. What did you pull flavor wise?
So any kind of rye, expect a pepper. The pepper on the front, that rye spice to it on the palate. And that first sip I got was not that. I got more sweeter, and I don't know if it's because we had cinnamon on the mind, but I got more of a sweet cinnamon spice rather than a rye spice to it.
Yeah, my first thought was an apple pie. Like I get apple right up front with that cinnamon mixing in. I don't have the buttery portion that you would get with an apple pie crust, but I definitely get like the innards of an apple pie, like a cinnamon spiced apple. That's my first real thought out of this.
Yeah, I can see that. I'm enjoying this though. It's a sweet spice to it. It's not a rye spice that will burn you. I'm not a huge rye guy, but I do enjoy trying to find a rye I really enjoy. So this is good. This is sweet rather than spicy.
This is a fantastic rye. And as they put it, this is a rye that is for everybody. I think a rye fan would really like this. But for those of you like you, and you're not a huge rye guy, this one plays to your palate a little more because it's going towards more of that sweet, corny, bourbon-y kind of corn flavor than the rye, which is normally overpowering for some folks. This is a really good pour. And the finish, I think, is a medium, just slow finish. It's not like that pepper that punches you. I've got a mid-tongue, which is normally my favorite go-to when it's a finish. It's like a deeper finish than you would expect. So
Yeah, I'm enjoying this. It's a good rye flavor. Usually, I think I just said it. The rye burns a little bit, but this is a good rye flavor that's coming out. Yeah, I can't remember. I think what's the term you use? Viscosity. This has a good viscosity to it. It lingers in my mouth. I'm going to repeat it again, but this is a sweet rye. It's not a spicy rye, a peppery rye. It's got a good rye flavor that's adding to the rest of the corn. I don't know if they're just blending well together, but I usually get, it's only 4%. You said malted barley.
and I don't get any of that.
No, I think it's low enough, but I don't like the high malted barleys. Those usually give it to me a sour flavor. But man, this is a good linger of a good rye corn mesh. This is delicious.
Yeah, at the second pour, I got a little more of that corn after the apple pie back in mid-tongue. This is really good. If you had to rate it, review it, where are you sitting on our rating scale?
Yeah, for a rye, this is definitely, it's still a rye taste. I'm giving this an everyday player for a rye.
Yeah, and for those of you who are new here and don't understand our rating system, we've got a 5-scale rating system starting at the top, which is Hall of Fame. We have yet to really get into a Hall of Fame drink yet. As far as the second scale, it's All-Star. I believe I ranked the King's Ranch in All-Star a couple weeks ago, which is the first one that we've had.
The highest one we've had.
So you went, was that a bench for you? And that's the cool thing I love about this is everybody's got their own different palates. You may rank something in All-Star.
That's what's great about bourbon. You enjoy what you enjoy.
So second is All-Star. Think of it like a baseball theme, Hall of Fame, All-Star, everyday player. That's right in the middle. Means it's an everyday, it's good enough to be there every day as a player, but also someone who hits above normal and you can count on, and that's where Michael just ranked this, and that's where I'm going to rank this as well. The other two are bench players and then a cut. Son of a bitch. And the last one is a designated for assignment or just a cut from the team, which we haven't given out yet, thankfully. I don't think we will unless it's just absolutely not our cup of tea. But still, that's our 5.
Don't test me.
No, don't test you. I have one that if we had it, I would probably rank it as a cut from my team and pour down the drain.
That's
but
an idea right there. We should send each other blind samples that we think would be DFAs.
Do you want this for your team? But that is our rating system and our ranking system. Again, great pour. Bushwood Spirits, Stillwater Rye. Thank you to Bushwood for sending this over for us to sample. This is great stuff. And you can buy this on their website. It's $89.99, so a little bit higher when it comes to the pricing. One other thing I noticed, I think they're sourcing this from Bardstown at this point because I did see the picture of Brad Carpenter, who is their CEO and founder, on their website. It said that he was bottling the Bushwood on the Bardstown Bourbon Company floor. So a lot of these distilleries are sourcing their stuff right now, and it looks like that's where this is coming from now. As far as the tasting notes for this on their website, again, everybody has their own taste, but they're saying that the nose is of caramelized apples. So I got that with the taste, finely ground nutmeg, and just a slight amount of rye, perfect contrast of sweet and spicy. That's what they said on the nose.
There you go.
For the palate, it speaks to the journey of the heart and mind. You'll find a deep measure of wisdom with every sip. I don't know if I'm getting more wisdom, but it finishes long and smooth with a note of candied citrus and tropical fruit. I don't get that. It says medium body with silky, viscous mouth. So there's that silky viscosity that we were talking about. And then the finish is long and smooth with candied citrus and tropical fruit. I don't get that candied citrus or tropical fruit out of it. I know I have more of an apple pie kind of taste to me, but either way, pretty good. This is perfect, neat, but if you get a golf ball shaped cube, you can toss it in that, or old fashioned and Manhattans. I bet you this would be a pretty good old fashioned mix too, because it's got that bourbon and that rye taste to it.
I think ryes make a good old fashioned. I'm not a big old fashioned because old fashions kind of just make it sweeter, right?
Yeah, you're not a huge sweet guy.
Nah.
I enjoy
Mess with my bourbon.
I enjoy a decent old fashioned, but the bitters have to be right, and it's got to be the right kind of simple syrup. So moving on. So again, thank you to Bushwood for passing that on.
Fantastic. I might finish the rest of this sample you sent me.
Oh.
Usually I split it and save a sample for another night. And
For another night.
this
Well,
one might be finished.
I destroyed the sample that Ben sent us a couple weeks ago before we could even really rate it. I was like,
Which one? The King Ranch?
The King Ranch. It was so good. Yeah, I loved it. I know you weren't a huge fan, but it was okay. And thank you again to Ben. So moving on, we're going to head on over to the baseball portion of the Bourbon and Baseball podcast, and we're going to start out with trivia. Mikey, I've got 2 separate trivia questions for you. They both are regarding the Cy Young, because last week we had both Cy Young Award winners, of course, Justin Verlander, and the other one was Sandy Alcantara, or Alcantara, as some people would like to call him.
Yeah, with say that Sandy Alcantara note, I just got to thank my boy Will Koshaver for trading me Sandy Alcantara at the end of last year for nothing. So basically nothing. So shout out to my boy Will Koshaver.
Well, thank you, Will, for just handing over a Cy Young Award winner to Mikey.
That's
So
right.
with Sandy Alcantara winning, he actually had 6 complete games this season, which is incredible for today's day and age.
Dude was a horse.
Yeah. Do you know who the last pitcher, major leagues, that's AL or NL, had 6 complete games or more was? In what year?
I gotta go with the easy guess. Mad Dog. Greg Maddux.
No.
Don't shake your head. Don't shake your head if I'm not even given to finish the answer yet. You said person and year, and you're shaking your head. Come on. All right, so no. I don't say Mad Dog. I don't say Greg Maddux.
Okay, then who's your answer?
Let's go with John Lieber, 1999.
It's more recent than that. It was the same city, but a different team. Chris Sale, back in 2016, had 6 complete games with the Chicago White Sox. Turning on to trivia question number 2, Justin Verlander just won another Cy Young. He's now the 6th pitcher to win multiple Cy Young awards unanimously, meaning he got every single first-place vote.
All right.
Who was the last pitcher to do that?
Who was the last AL or NL?
Yeah, AL or NL. So again, to win multiple Cy Young awards unanimously.
Let's go with there's no year to it, so let's just say Clayton Kershaw.
That's a good guess. But it is
Hold on. I'm gonna guess the second one is John Lackey didn't win multiple unanimously. He was a stud. Jared Weaver had a couple good years with the Angels. How about John Smoltz?
Johan Santana in 04 and 06 with
dude was-
the Minnesota Twins. When remember when him and Liriano came up, and then Liriano had the arm injury? Those are some studs right there at the top of the rotation.
Francisco Liriano was
A boss. And then he had multiple.
Johan Santana. I can just see it right now.
Yep. He was the only one who's ever thrown a no-hitter for the Mets. There's another trivia question for you. But
Francisco Liriano?
no, Johan Santana.
Oh, I forget he went to the Mets too.
Yeah. I think I don't know if he finished his career with the Mets, because I know he bounced around a little bit towards the end, but his last best years were with the New York Mets. So now that we've switched over from the bourbon to the baseball portion, we're getting into the offseason now, Mike.
Oh, I'm sorry, bourbon.
Well, we're still sipping on the whiskey, the Stillwater Rye from Bushwood. But last week, along with the announcements of those award winners, we also had a couple of deadlines that came through. We had the qualifying offer and exception deadline, and then also the non-tender deadline. Usually there are a couple of noteworthy non-tenders. I feel like this year it's crazier than it's ever been before. Do you think that too, or?
I would say the year 2020, when everyone was trying to save every single
after
dollar.
2020, that was when Kyle Schwarber got non-tendered, I believe.
Yeah, one of the worst moves right there, I'd say. But I'd say that year was pretty crazy, because everyone was like, "Oh, we're not making money.
Yeah.
We got to save every dollar." And Yeah, that year. I don't know if it's because the Cubs non-tendered Schwarber, who was one of their best pure hitters. They just didn't believe in him all of a sudden. But off my Schwarber rant, my boy, miss you, Schwarbs.
So for those of you who don't know what a non-tender is, so every year the team has to tender their players a contract. You're not just automatically renewed for the following season.
Players.
Yes. If you've gotten a contract, say you've signed an extension for 6 years and $75 million, your contract moves over to the next year. But certain players are in arbitration or they haven't even reached that. As you come into the big leagues, you get 6, sometimes 7 years of what they call team control, where the team controls you and you don't go to free agency. But during that time, the team has to tender you a contract for the next season. So they make the decision of whether or not they want to give you the money that you are worth, which is usually, if you're in your first 3 years, a couple $100,000. I don't know what the minimum is after the CBA, but I think it's around $725,000 or thereabouts. And they don't have to give you a raise in your first 3 years. Generally, by good standing, they give you a couple $1,000s more, but they don't have to do that until your third year, which is when you reach arbitration, and that means years 4, 5, and 6, you are on a different pay scale. The teams can choose whether or not they want to tender you that contract or not. So if someone gets non-tendered, that means that they're basically getting cut from the team and they become a free agent, able to sign with whoever, wherever. But when they sign with that team, depending on the terms of the contract, usually they still have team control through the remainder of their 3 years or however many years they would have had left when they got cut. I think there were like 100 non-tenders last week from the list I have. And some of them kind of out there. The biggest name, of course, Cody Bellinger, who was an MVP. Was it 18?
3 years ago. 3 years removed.
Yeah, so that would have been 19 then. Because
I think Yelich won.
Yelich won 18 with Javi, and then
should have been Baez. Yeah, should have been Baez. Yelich
and then the following year it was
the outfield for the pitches, knowing when it was coming in Miller Park. He hit most of his home runs in Miller Park, so just watch his eyes move as he sees the pitch coming in Miller Park.
Then.
Yeah.
So, as Cubs fans, we're not a huge Christian Yelich fan because he was part of that sign stealing ordeal. So Cody Bellinger, the big one, former MVP. A couple other ones that jump off the page right away. Dom Smith from the Mets. Who they
were trying to float away.
Yeah.
Oh, we got this great third baseman. Mm-hmm. Someone come take him. We've got too much. And a year later, they're like, oh, just kidding. We don't think very highly of him.
Alex Reyes from the Cardinals a couple years ago. He was their stud coming in out of the minors who could chuck 100 miles per hour. Then he had a couple of arm injuries, didn't quite make it in the rotation. He's a pretty decent bullpen guy if he is healthy. I mean, if you've got a guy who's chucking 100 miles per hour, if not higher, that's good to have in the back end. But there's Luke Voigt, who's been all over the place in the last 4 years. He got DFA'd or non-tendered by the Nationals. Also Eric Feedy, who is a back-end rotation pitcher, right-handed pitcher.
Right. He was supposed to be a Nationals, a mid-rotation stud for them coming up through their system, and it never clicked for him.
A couple other names, Ryan Yarbrough from the Rays, who's actually
That's probably my biggest surprise.
Yeah,
Ryan Yarbrough.
A solid arm. I mean, I don't know if I know it wasn't his best year this year, and the Rays don't like to pay people, so maybe they just thought, okay, he's heading to arbitration. I think as he's heading into arbitration, they just said, you know what, let's get rid of him.
You never doubt what the Rays do, because they always make the trade, and you're scared to trade with them because they're usually winning that trade.
Yep.
You think you're getting a stud back from the Rays, and they do well in their scouting.
A couple more that you may have heard of. Aristides Aquino from the Reds. Franchi Cordero. That's a good one to keep an eye on for a team who's trying to buy low and potentially get a young player who could turn things around. And that's what a lot of these players are. They're either really good prospects that flamed out or have gotten injured that aren't worth the money that they would be afforded to make according to the arbitration scale. Franchi Cordero would be one of those guys. An old friend, Jeimer Candelario from the Tigers, a former Cub. third
Is it
baseman.
Jeimer or Heimer?
Heimer or Jeimer. I've heard it as both.
Pujols.
Pujols. And then there's Adam Engel from the White Sox, who is a solid fourth outfielder. He's a guy who's going to plug and play at any one of those three outfield spots. He can go get it, and he can provide you a bat off of the bench. And then another one that jumped out a little bit more, just for the name itself, was Luke Weaver from the Mariners. He used to be a pitcher for the Cardinals, but he was DFA'd, or not DFA'd.
He went over from the Cardinals. He came up with the Cardinals as a prospect.
Yeah.
As a good prospect. Went to the D-backs in the Goldschmidt trade.
I think so. And then he went over to the Mariners from there.
Yeah.
And another one, just as Cubs fans, that jumps off the page is Braylon Marquez. He was the golden child pitcher, stud, throwing 100 miles per hour.
Top 2 prospect for the Cubs a few years ago.
In 2020.
100 as a lefty.
And he came up in 2020, and he's gotten hurt and hasn't been back since. So that's a list of non-tenders. Of course, it's highlighted by Cody Bellinger, who would have been due about $18 million. And the way he's played the last 2 years, I know the Dodgers were like, yep, we're done. I think he still could potentially return to the Dodgers on the right deal. I don't think that they want to pay him $18 million if they could try to get him for $15 million, but I've already seen that I think 5 separate teams reached out to him the night of. So he's going to be one of those hot commodities, and instantly I think jumps into the top 20 free agents available today.
Just because of that risk reward. It is a low floor, but it is a high reward there in that risk category.
Well, and I think what makes it a little more appealing is he can play multiple positions. He won his MVP at first base, I believe. But he's played most of the last several years in LA in center field. And I don't know if he won a gold glove, but he brings a very good glove to the outfield. And that versatility that if you have another first baseman that you can plug in the lineup and push him out to center field, I think really helps you. I think he ends up in a Yankees pinstripes. That's where I think he goes.
Makes sense.
That
because they could then have Rizzo at first base, and if they want to give Rizzo some rest at DH, like you said, they got that versatility to bring him in.
Yeah, rest Rizzo or put Rizzo at DH or just a day off for Rizzo. Rizzo's had some back issues in the past, so that could be where Bellinger comes in and takes over for Rizzo for a couple of days. But think about that right field porch for Bellinger. It did wonders for Rizzo this past year, and it balances out. Yeah, and it balances out that lineup without Judge, most likely. I don't think he's going to return to the Yankees, but we'll dive into that here in a second. You can go Rizzo, Stanton, Bellinger, and then any one of those righties. If LeMahieu's still there in the lineup, depending on where they have Torres at that point. But I think it evens out that lineup, which may be something that was missing for the Yankees. They'll have Harrison Bader, I believe, back this year. I don't think he's a free agent. I think he's got a couple more years. So I think that would be the best fit for Bellinger.
Man, speaking through that Yankees lineup, it sounds weak to me without a Judge in there.
It does.
Just
it does.
Stanton and Rizzo. I mean, that's your only big bats.
Yeah, and I don't know.
You have in the year.
Is Donaldson a free agent this year? I think.
Yes, I believe so.
So you got Kiner Falefa and Gleyber Torres up the middle there, which is not the best bats. You'll have LeMahieu coming back, who
they've got their stud prospect Volpe. He should be ready this year.
Well, that would be cheaper for them, for sure. But I think Cody Bellinger is a good fit for a couple teams. The Blue Jays.
There's a lot of teams needing a left-handed hitter.
Yeah,
everybody's looking for that left-handed bat.
The Blue Jays, the White Sox, the Cubs, the Cardinals, and the Marlins have all been names that I've seen connected to Bellinger. I don't think the White Sox would go 15+ million. Whatever happens, it's probably going to be a 1 or 2 year prove-it deal in my mind for Bellinger, and then get back on the open market after the year.
Yeah, I've seen him saying he wants to be able to prove himself, like you just said. Maybe a 2 year deal with a player option for that second year.
The other one that I kind of want to talk about just more again is Ryan Yarbrough. That's a pretty decent right-handed pitching he's not a prospect anymore because he's been in the league for a while, but you can put him in the
2018.
bullpen. You can put him in the rotation. I think he's done a decent amount of opening when he's pitched as well.
I don't like that. I don't like the idea of the opening. I hate
Me-
how the Rays do that.
Me neither, but it just shows the flexibility. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
he's not a he's not a bad back end of the rotation fill-in for a team that's looking for innings. So that's really all I've got regarding the non-tenders. But there are some interesting names there to see where they end up. Reyes, I'd be interested to see where he goes. And Dom Smith, he's a good reclamation prospect or project. It's same with Franchi Cordero. So those are some names to keep an eye on here over the next couple of weeks as we head towards the meetings, the winter meetings. I believe the first week and a half of December. So a couple weeks away from
in
that.
years past, that used to be when everything happened, man.
Yeah.
That was always, hey, tune in every night because that's when signings were happening.
And they happen at 1 or 2 a.m. So we'll see. We'll see with the new CBA how that all works out. This is going to be the first offseason with that. So turning from the non-tenders, we're going to go right into the free agency. So far, only one real big free agent signing, which dropped last week. You saw that on our Instagram account. Cheers to Michael and Kyle for keeping that going last week while I was out of reach and out of service. Big shout out to them. So Tyler Anderson, he goes from one LA team to the lesser LA team. What do you think?
Poor guys. I mean, is he enough to help Mike Trout? I think the Angels make more additions, but hey, Tyler Anderson was in Pittsburgh, right? That's where he came up.
He's been a couple of different spots. I remember him most from Pittsburgh. I think he pitched for the Brewers at one point. There's so many Andersons. I know Brian Anderson pitched for the Brewers as well. Tyler Anderson.
I think he came straight from the Pirates.
I know he pitched
Nope,
with
I'm lying. Sorry.
Colorado.
Yeah.
I was gonna say
He came up through Colorado.
and then went
Was
to
on
the
the Giants,
Pirates.
to Pittsburgh, to Seattle. Man, I was so wrong.
I was going to say, he's been a journeyman. He's been all over the place. And this was by far his best year. So he had a 15-5
Sure.
record.
He earned that contract. Sorry.
You're fine. 257 ERA. The lowest ever in his career outside of that was his rookie campaign where he only pitched in 19 games and he had a 3.54. Every other year it's been 4.3, 4.5, 4.5, 4.8.
Yeah.
So this was definitely a career year. It's more of a blip year. Good to him on cashing that bag. I mean, $39 million over 3 years, that's life-changing money for a guy who has been a journeyman for the last couple of years. So take it. I think he probably could have waited a little longer, but when you get that life-changing money held out in front of you, 3 years, he's going into his year 33 season. So
He could easily retire at age 36
yeah.
after this.
Left-handed pitching. Teams are always looking for left-handed pitching. Good for the Angels to lock in, I'd say, a 4 or 5. He pitched more like a 3 this year, if not a 2, with that 2.57 ERA over there. And
not super expensive either. For 3 years, 39?
No, it's not going to ruin your payroll. That's for sure. So cheers to Tyler Anderson for getting that money. But if I don't know why the Dodgers wouldn't sign him to that. Right? I know that they're going to have to wait for Walker to come back at some point. He's not going to be back right away because
they've got Walker, they've got Dustin May, they've got Julio Urias, they've got
and
Matt,
Kershaw
and Kershaw,
and Gonsolin, Tony Gonsolin. So I guess,
and they have a couple of guys in the works. One guy started this year a couple times for them. At least 1, 2, 3 guys. They always are pumping guys out.
So
Dodgers.
maybe that's why, but still, it's kind of odd just to see him go across town. So far, that's about it. Other action that's happened, we've had a couple of trades. That big one, the Teoscar Hernandez deal, that's what I'm going to call it because the other two going back weren't huge names. But Teoscar Hernandez goes over to Seattle from the Blue Jays, and the Blue Jays receive 2 pitching, 1 prospect and 1 guy who's been with the Mariners for, I think, 4 or 5 years. More so of a bullpen piece. Is his name Ryan?
That's Eric. It was Eric.
Eric? His name's Eric.
Swanson.
Eric Swanson, that's what it is. But he had like a 1.57 ERA this year in 53 games. So,
man, relievers. I mean,
Yeah.
Teoscar is going into his final year of control. So I guess you can either say, hey, 1 year of guy is worth a lot in a prospect and a good reliever, or
Yeah.
you can say, hey, they only brought just a dime a dozen relievers.
yeah. Well, the big issue with the Blue Jays was their relief towards the end of the year. They really only had Romano. They didn't have anybody else that they could rely on. So this gives you another back-end arm towards the back end of the bullpen that you can rely on. And the prospect they got back, I think, fits right now at 8th in their
In Seattle's system.
Was it 8th in Seattle system? I thought it was 8th in Toronto system where he ranks out now that he's switched over. Either way, it's a top 10 prospect. And it's a lefty prospect. So a lefty, you're going to have pitching down the road. And Teoscar, he can hit 30-plus home runs. He had the coming out party in 2020. In the last several years, he's hit 20-plus. So I think it's a fair deal for both teams. It takes a weakness away from the Blue Jays, which was their bullpen, and it adds that bat into the outfield for the Mariners, who now have Teoscar in left field. And then in center field, you've got the Rookie of the Year.
Julio, as Brandon would say.
Julio Rodriguez. So moving on, free agents, the rumor mill really has been kind of quiet. I know there's been a couple of things here or there.
Shortstop there.
Verlander met with the Mets. I think that was yesterday. And Judge is flying to San Fran to meet with the Giants. So let's break down a couple of the top 25 or top 20 free agents. We won't touch on all of them because we know you've got other things to do. But the big name, Aaron Judge, that's going to be the mover. He's coming off of MVP season. Stud.
Huge season.
Where do you think he ends up?
I like the idea. I think he's from I believe he's
Sacramento.
from the West Coast, right?
He's from Sacramento.
Yeah. So I don't rule out the Giants have money to spend. Can you name a big contract they have right now?
Brandon Belt, maybe? Is that even a big?
Belt's a free agent.
Okay, so he's off the books. I think Brandon Crawford at short would be their only other long-term piece that's been on the team for a long time.
So he makes sense. I mean, that would be fun to hit it into the glove in left field, the water, the bay in right field. That would be fun.
I ultimately think that's where he's going to end up. It's either the Yankees or the Giants. I don't see him going anywhere else because it's hard to leave the Yankees when you're Mr. Yankee. He's the face of that franchise.
He's their face, for sure.
So it's either the Yankees or the Giants returning home, going back home to the Giants, who have an illustrious history as well. I would say the Giants. The other name out there, Jacob deGrom. He did opt out of that last year of the deal he had with the Mets, so he's a free agent. I've heard a couple of different spots. Where do you think he ends up, or where have you heard that he's potentially looking to move to?
So I've heard the biggest guess in the industry is saying Atlanta. Atlanta's going to pony up and have a solid 1 through 5 because deGrom is from Florida, I believe. I also have heard rumors of Texas wanting to solidify their rotation and get this big arm coming in. So those are the two I've heard. I ultimately think he ends up back in New York.
And that's where I think he goes. If it's not the Mets, I think it's going to be the Braves, just to kind of throw it in their face. But I don't see him.
I think that'd be so much fun.
Down in Atlanta, you would have.
I'm always excited to see guys move on, like a franchise, like Judge, franchise face guy to move on. I was like when Kershaw re-signed with the Dodgers, like, come on, man, go do something else.
Yeah. You have a guy that you want to talk about that's intriguing to you?
Free agent wise?
Yeah.
I do think I think the Giants could make a huge splash by signing Judge, and I think that could entice the Japanese starting pitcher Senga. Senga, right?
Kodai, right? Yeah. Kodai Senga.
I think that could entice him. Hey, look, the star #1 free agent went to San Francisco. You could come pitch alongside him.
Yeah, I've heard that he has looked at multiple places. I heard the Cubs actually make a big play on Senga. The Padres
We've got Suzuki.
The Padres are always in on those Asian pitchers, but I also heard that the Blue Jays made a pretty decent pitch as well. They need some pitching in that rotation, especially with how bad. Who's the guy who came up from the Twins? Jose Barrios. He had a rough year. Senga. I always kind of want to say the Mariners because it always seems like they go to Seattle.
Because Ichiro had
Ichiro.
very good.
Who was the pitcher there? It was mainly Ichiro, but they just had a guy in the late teens. His name's escaping me right now. But usually they're pretty good when it comes to the Japanese ball players or the Korean ball players. I think he actually ends up with the Cubs. The Cubs have a pretty good way of throwing out their pitch to those free agents. They were runner-up for Shohei. And the only reason Shohei chose the Angels was because the Cubs didn't have an outfield. Well, he was going to have to play the outfield.
No DH.
Right, they didn't have a DH at the time. Now it would be a whole different story. I think that they've made a big enough play. I think Senga ends up with the Cubs. That's going to be my prediction, is that Kodai Senga ends up in a Cubby Blue pinstripe.
All right, I'm going to list a couple of names here, and I want you to tell me where you think they're going to end up. About like three, four, five guys. The first one is going to be Justin Verlander. Where do you think he ends up?
I think he ends up with the Yankees.
With the Yankees, okay.
Yep.
I've seen rumors of Dodgers. Basically, for Verlander, he's asking for $40 million.
It's very similar to the Scherzer deal. I think is where he's going to end up. He's slightly older than Scherzer, so it might not be the same AAV, but it's going to be in the ballpark.
Yeah, so I only see the rich teams in on Verlander, which kind of sucks.
It's going to be the Mets, the Yankees, or the Dodgers, and I think the Yankees are going to pull that one out.
All right, Kenley Jansen is a free agent. The
Dodgers.
Braves. You think he goes back to the Dodgers?
Mm-hmm.
That's
my
but
guess.
not as their closer?
As their eighth inning
another
guy
arm.
who turns into potentially a closer if they need him.
All right.
What are your
Craig
thoughts?
Kimbrell.
Cubs.
Craig Kimbrell?
Cubs.
He said back to the Cubs?
Yep. I believe so, inside baseball here, a guy who lives in northern Huntsville in North Alabama, Bo Brooks. He knows Craig pretty well.
State Farm.
He drives the Jeep over there in Huntsville. So he's good friends with Craig. Bo played
Do you
AAA.
have insider information here, Brandon?
Not on that regard, but I know that. So Craig's daughter was sick, and I think she's got some health issues, and they go to Northwestern Hospital. I think he enjoyed his time with the Cubs and the White Sox. He's not going to be looking for. He's made boatloads of money at this point in his career. He's just going to be looking for a team.
Go where you want, right?
Go where you want. I know he enjoyed Chicago, and I think that he's a good buy low candidate. I mean, he's not going to be a closer, but he's still got that potential to be a shutdown reliever.
Same guy like Kenley, step in and help out.
Part of me thinks the
closer
Cubs
role is really fading.
Yeah.
Teams are going more of just, hey, who works right now? Here's what the lineup is. Who works? We got a couple of good high end guys.
But Braves or the Cubs? I'd say let's go with the Braves. Braves, just because I know he's got his. I think he lives in Tennessee in the off season, so that's closer to the Braves. So that's where I'm going to go with.
So here's my list. Is Mike Clevenger no longer the Padres? Is he a free agent?
I don't believe so.
My list here says
You know what?
Clevenger.
He might be. I don't think he.
The Padres had 3 years of control, and so I think it was 2020, 2021, and 2022.
Well, let me look at this real quick. But Mike Clevenger, so he came from the
Cleveland.
Indians, right?
Who?
Well, he was with.
Great. Hey, all right.
Hey, they were the Indians
edit
when
that
they were the Indians when he got traded, were they not?
Okay.
So he never played for the Guardians. He's an unrestricted free agent this year. Yeah, he just made 6.5. So he signed a 2-year extension in 2021. So yeah, he's a free agent. I don't know, man.
He didn't do well this year. He had like hiccups of good.
He's not. I mean, I don't know. I'm not clamoring to sign Mike Clevenger, He did that thing in 2022 that kind of boils my blood a little bit. Kind of, he was the one who during COVID went out to dinner when he wasn't supposed to
They
be,
weren't supposed to,
and
right.
he had a teammate. I understand. I'm not trying to get political here, but back then it kind of felt like you were being pulled away from things. But your teammate was recovering from cancer with Carlos Carrasco, and he put his teammate potentially in a life's danger.
Right.
So I don't know about the thoughts on that. I wouldn't want him on my team.
NLE screams to me. Maybe
I was
like
thinking the
Marlins or
Orioles.
Phillies.
Actually, the
The
Orioles.
where? The Orioles.
Baltimore. They need pitching.
They do need pitching. I have seen the talks that the Orioles have pitching, but they got two studs, absolute studs coming up in DL Hall and
But they're still going to be
Rodriguez.
rookies.
Right.
And they're going to need some seasoning, so you're going to want somebody who's been there for a while. I think they signed Jameson Taillon, and I think Clevenger would be a pretty good fit in Baltimore. An under-the-radar kind of arm that is not going to be asked to be the biggest guy on that team, but who brings the potential at some shutdown. When he pitched with the Guardians franchise, he had some decent stuff. Mm-hmm. They only traded him away because of the off-the-field issues. So I think the Orioles would be a decent fit.
So, all right, a couple more. I got Corey Kluber, former Cy Young with the
Man,
with
he's
the
been
Indians.
all over lately. He was the Cy Young.
I've seen rumors of him wanting to come to the Cubs.
Really? He was with the Rays here this past year, right?
Right.
And then he pitched the year before with the Rangers and the Yankees. He's been all over the place. That's another.
He's a good veteran guy who would be good for the Orioles. Come in and help these young kids coming up.
He's familiar with the AL East too.
Yeah, he was a stud. Next guy I got for you is JD Martinez. He is not with the Red Sox anymore.
Yeah, I think he opted out. He had was it the end of his deal or did he opt out?
I want to say on his performance, he didn't opt out. I want to say it was the end of his contract.
I think you're right. I know he had two opt-outs in the first place. I think,
the Red Sox lived in the basement of the AL East this year.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to change next year.
It's going to be tough. It's going to be
Orioles
tough.
improved. The Orioles are just going to improve.
They're going to keep adding talent.
The Yankees, the Blue Jays are going to be are going to do well.
That's the toughest division. That's the toughest division. Do you have a beat on where you think he'd go?
No, actually, I'm going through. I'm actually was surprised to see him on this list of free agents here.
I wouldn't be surprised if he stays in the AL. He's a DH, so it's cutting out 15.
We have DH in the NL now.
Oh yeah, that's right. I'm so used to that not being the case. You know what? The Tigers would be a team.
Anybody could use JD at this
right.
point. He's probably not going to command a lot of money.
No, he's made a ton.
So he could go anywhere and go hit home runs and be a veteran in the clubhouse.
That'll be an interesting name. It's not, like you said, it's not going to be an, oh my God, we signed JD Martinez, but it's going to be that guy who comes in and it's going to be the glue of a lineup. Similar to Jose Abreu, I think, right? Like, he's not going to jump off the page. That's a name. I think he ends up with the Padres, actually. What do you think?
I think I would love for him to make sense for the Cubs.
Mm-hmm.
He's right-handed, right? Abreu is.
Yeah.
He's right-handed, so it doesn't it doesn't fit perfectly, but it fits perfect as a veteran guy to help out Mervis, Mash Mervis. Yeah. If anybody doesn't know who Mash Mervis,
Arizona Rookie League,
he's gonna
or AL's Fall League MVP.
Yeah, I want to say the Padres sway him over there as well.
Yeah,
as an immediate competitor for sure.
It's also a win now opportunity. I don't think the Cubs are going to be a win now, and you're not signing him for more than a 1 or a 2 year deal. Probably a 2-year, $24 million, $25 million deal, and I think he fits in that lineup over there in San Diego. He's going to be a guy who can. You know who he might actually be a good guy for is Tatis. Hey, get your things together. Get your shit together. You've ruined this team if the Padres had Tatis in the playoffs last year, that's a whole lot other opportunity.
An MVP. an MVP
Yeah.
player inserting your lineup for free.
Yep.
He would have came back from the injury,
Mm-hmm.
and even the injury in the first place. I
Oh,
mean, the players, the star players. I mean, I know they're humans too,
yeah.
but there's certain activities that they don't. If they're worth this much money and they have this kind of career,
Mm,
there's certain activities that they do not need to be doing.
agreed. Yeah, Tatis. Last
I
couple.
think another
Go
big
ahead.
name also starting pitching wise, Taiwan Walker.
I think
He's
that
a stud prospect coming up with Arizona. Never really hit that
Wasn't
level
he-
that they thought he'd be.
he was with the Mariners at one point too, wasn't he? What didn't he start with the Mariners and then move to the Diamondbacks? I think he was with the Mariners and moved to the Diamondbacks and then moved over to the Mets. Let me look it up real quick. 2013 was his rookie year with Seattle.
With Seattle, look at
And
that.
in 17, he went to the Diamondbacks. He had a good year with the Diamondbacks in 2017. In 2020 with the Mariners, he wasn't great, but with the Blue Jays, he had a good 6-game stretch. And then with the Mets the last couple of years, he was decent. 29 starts the last 2 years, so 58 combined. That's a decent arm.
This was his best year. I think this was his best year finally.
Yeah, 157 innings, 3.49 ERA. Yeah, this is right on par, exactly with. So get this, he had a 3.49 ERA with 157 in the third innings in 2017, and last year he had a 3.49 ERA with 157 in the third inning pitched. And let's look at the strikeouts that year.
So as you're looking that up, did you see? This is going back to the Cy Youngs. Verlander had 228 innings and a
2.28, right?
ERA, and Alcantara had the same thing. His innings pitch matched his ERA.
2.36
No, it
or
was-
something like that, right?
It was 228 because Verlander was 175.
That's what it was. Yeah, 100. Yeah, that's ridiculous. That's crazy. That's cool. Yeah. A couple more names real quick.
I got one more for you.
Oh, so Taiwan Walker, I think that's another name for the Orioles or the Mets.
The Orioles are an up-and-coming team, a team that can see, and like the Cubs.
They're-
The Orioles and Cubs are overlapping with their needs.
Yeah, the Orioles aren't going to be shopping at the top shelf, but they're going to be shopping at that middle tier to second to third level, and I think that's where Taiwan is right now.
So would you be? So we got the top 4 shortstops: Turner, Correa, Bogarts, and Swanson.
Mm-hmm.
I think. Would you be happy with the consolation prize of Elvis Andrus, who was early in his career good with the Rangers, but with the White Sox this in his second half, dude was a stud.
Yeah, and the only reason the Athletics got rid of him was because if he reached a certain plate appearances, he would have vested for more money, and they didn't want to pay it, so they cut him. I think it was like 550 plate appearances, and he would have gotten like an extra $5 or $10 million or whatever it was, those incentives. So they were like, "Yep, no, we're not paying it."
I didn't know that. That's so Oakland.
Yeah. The only reason I know that is I live in the Cap and J Hood quite a bit, and they were raving about Elvis Andrus. I don't know. It's one of those top 4 or bust in my mind. Andrus is what? He's going to be going into his age 34 season. He's a lifetime 270
I don't know if you
hitter.
want a shortstop that old. You want someone younger, quicker.
Well, he's only
Especially
gonna-
with the shift, man.
Yeah, well, he's only going to be there for a 1 or 2 year deal. I don't see him signing a multiple year deal. I'd rather
Be a
have
good
one
fit
of the
for
other
the
4.
Yankees.
Oh, yeah, that'd be a good fit for
Volpe.
the Yankees. He could go even back into the AL as one of those AL West teams probably could use him. And Oakland won't be grabbing him again, but I could.
I don't think he'd choose to sign with them again.
Who's the Angels shortstop?
They've got a couple of guys coming up. Levon Soto is a shortstop prospect that got called up late. He was I think a 2021 first round pick for them. He made his debut. So they've got a couple of options at shortstop. Young. So if they wanted a stopgap,
Right.
that might make sense.
And he's a decent bat. I'd have to look at the lineup construction there. Just that's a lot of right-handed hitters right off the bat in my mind. Outside of Shohei, I can't really name another outfielder because Walsh came over to. Oh no, Walsh is with the Angels, right? Lefty.
Yeah, but say Walsh got traded.
No,
Okay.
Mixing up the other long-haired guy who went to
Brandon
the Marsh. Walsh and Marsh.
Which I didn't realize the Phillies gave up their top prospect
I didn't know
in
that
Logan
either.
O'Hoppe for Brandon Marsh.
Huh. Well, so speaking of those shortstops, I'm going to list all four. You tell me where you think they're going to go. Trey Turner. Whoops.
So I don't think it makes sense, but I hear that his preferred place is Philadelphia.
I think so
They
too.
got Bryson Stott, who is
Well, so the thought is they're going to get rid of Gene Segura as a free agent.
and move Stott over
Move
to
Stott to
base.
second base. You fill Trey Turner, and then think of that lineup. I think Turner ends up in Philly. That's my thoughts.
Yeah. Yep.
Carlos Correa.
I know he's rumored as the strongest one to the Cubs. I know the Cubs want to pay for him. I think he's overrated for them. Not because of the value of the player, but the amount of money for value. I don't think he's worth that much money.
He's he's a Boras client, isn't he? So he's going to
Yes.
get paid no matter what.
I think he ends up with the Cubs. I'm not.
Uh-uh.
Actually, I don't even know where he'd end up otherwise.
I think it's either the Cubs or the Twins. I think those are the two teams. He either goes back
Last
to...
year I was clamoring for the Orioles to sign him. I was like, they've got studs coming up. They've got a first baseman stud. They've got an outfielder stud. They've got pitching studs. But then all of a sudden, Gunnar Henderson appeared at the late end of the season. I was like, okay, that wasn't aware of Gunnar being this good. He's a prime to win Rookie of the Year. I still think he'd be great there. I mean,
It's just, again, are they going to spend the money right now? That's...
right, and he's going to command. He's Boris client. He's going to command.
I think he's going to get a 5-year deal with a 6th and a 7th year as like options. That's my thoughts. The back end where he can opt in or opt out.
Like Arenado had, where he can opt into that last 2 years.
I'm going to go... I already said... You know what? I think Senga and Correa end up in... I'd rather see Bogarts than Correa in a Cubby uniform, but I think it's going to be Correa and Senga.
So rank your shortstops preferred for the Cubs. Let's get Cubs specific here for a second.
Turner,
1 through 4.
Turner, Bogarts, Correa, Swanson.
I'm with you there. I think now the reason I like the Bogarts, I think Bogarts would be good to slide to third.
Exactly.
He's the best guy to play third base. And
You've got Nico
there.
Yeah, and Bogarts has played third in the past. Didn't he come up playing third base and then shift over to shortstop at one?
I want to say you're right about that.
I'm gonna just look it up just to cover my bases. No.
I think
pun
Turner.
intended.
I mean, if he loses a step in speed, he's still a high average hitter.
And Bogart and Turner can play anywhere, really.
He was center field for a little while.
With the Nationals when he came up, I remember making diving catches out that way. I mean, I think next year, in the next couple of years, speed is going to be key, just because it looks like he played in Boston in third base, 57 innings and 385 innings in 2014. So he played quite a bit at third base to come up. I think 100% that would be a great fit. Turner and Bogarts are the top two. I think that you're kind of going with a consolation if you're going with Correa. It's not an awful bat, but I would rather.
Swanson had no power until this final contract year, and you hate paying in for a guy who performed in contract years.
I think he hit 20 plus last year too, but the last 2 years are the 2 years that he popped. Everything else was kind of like, where's this Dansby guy who was the number 1 overall pick by the Diamondbacks, right? Like, he's got that pedigree. It's just, I have a hard time. Not all of those players in Atlanta are going to be long-term fixtures, right? Like, one of them has to be bad by law of averages.
Right. So where's Swanson end up? You said Correa ends up. You said Turner to Philly, Correa to the Cubs. Where's Swanson and Bogarts?
I think Bogarts goes back. Bogarts ends up if that ends up how it goes. I think Bogarts would then go. I think Dansby then goes to the Dodgers. And I don't think the Braves would be in on a shortstop. The Braves would be an Elvis Andrews kind of location if that ends up being the case. I've heard that
they've got Vaughn Grissom up already and Ozzie at second. So Vaughn and to have a low-cost Elvis
Yeah.
another guy you like for in case Vaughn didn't quite work?
I read something earlier today that said that if the Braves don't sign Dansby back, they will not be in on the other 3. So
Too much money. The Braves don't
Yeah.
spend money.
they
Even though the Braves will have right now are on pace to have the 4th largest payroll.
that's because all their
Usually-
guys they are signed on extensions, and they've locked down every other low young player. I don't know.
Bogarts, I don't know where he'd end up if he didn't go Cubs. I don't think he's going back to the Red Sox. The Red Sox aren't in win now, so why spend money? They're gonna make an effort at Devers, and
You know
part
it's
of me,
gonna.
just because I kind of hope he gets traded away, just so they can restock their system, and just because I have a buddy who's a Red Sox fan,
Yeah.
who would absolutely die. He died when Mookie was traded, and he would absolutely lose it if they did another Mookie move with Devers.
I don't want to say it, but it starts with ST and it ends with a Lewis.
So we'll just move on.
And then the last one, Carlos Rodon. Where do you think he ends up?
I don't think he comes to the Cubs.
No, I don't
he
think
goes
so
to
either.
Texas.
Texas or the Yankees? If the Yankees don't get Verlander, I think it's Rodon. If they do get Verlander, I think Rodon goes to Texas. So
Yeah.
those are just a couple of.
Texas is just going to be stockpiling. They're getting ready to compete. They've got Simeon at second. They've got who's at short?
Corey Seager.
Corey Seager, and then Josh Jung, who was supposed to be a stud.
Mm-hmm.
He should be up ready this year at third base. The Rangers are gonna make a run for it.
Yeah, they were hoping to make that run last year. I just don't think that they quite were able to put it all together yet. So that's just a little bit about the free agency mill and what's going on. I know we went a lot into the baseball there, so thank you for sticking with us. Real quick, it is Thanksgiving week, Michael. I'm not going to ask you what you're thankful for because it should be the same every year, your family, your health, whatever.
I'm thankful for you, Brandon. I'm thankful for you, buddy.
Likewise. And Kyle, Kyle, thank you for listening. Thank you for you. But what's your favorite Thanksgiving food? One dish on the table. What are you reaching for?
All right, I'm gonna I'm not a big sweet potato person, but sweet potato with brown sugar and marshmallows on top.
The casserole? Oh, yeah.
With a close 1A 1B is stuffing.
Stuffing. Not dressing. Stuffing. Thank you.
Yeah, all right, there we go.
Man.
Yeah.
I'm going with stuffing or green bean casserole. I love me those green beans with the crispy stuff on top, the crispy onions. I'd love
the crusties.
And the Krusties, Krusty Krab pizza is the pizza for you and me.
The Krusty Krab.
Squidward. You have a tradition Thanksgiving that you like, or is it just normally just normal Thanksgiving for you?
No, it's been changing as my families have been growing.
Yeah.
So one year we've in the past we either have gone to my sisters in Nashville and fried a turkey, or I've had my in-laws. Angie's Aunt Kathy comes down and I smoke the turkey, or we go visit her Angie's Aunt Kathy up in Indiana.
Angie's
So
Aunt
it's
Kathy.
changing.
Yeah.
Yeah, Angie's Aunt Kathy, and sometimes we go see her cousin, or we go see my cousin Kayla, that lives in Indiana as well.
Is that Angie's Aunt Kathy's daughter, Kayla?
That's Aunt Kath.
So your cousin,
Angie's Aunt Kathy's daughter.
Your cousin, Kayla.
Is my cousin Kayla. Yeah.
Okay.
But with everyone's families growing, it's changing every year, so we'll see.
Yeah, in my industry, there's not really much of a tradition that you can build just because I'll be working on Thanksgiving. The news industry does not sleep. So I'll be doing weather at 4, 5, 6, 7, and 11 on WCPO 9 News. So you can find me there. So happy Thanksgiving to you and your family. Thank you. I'm thankful for our listeners. That's who I'm thankful for. So big shout out to you guys. Is there one thing on the Thanksgiving table you don't like? You're saying hell to the no.
Cranberries.
Cranberries? The
Cranberry
canned
sauce.
cranberries or like the real boiled stuff? Or both?
Like the Jello looking stuff.
Comes out of the can
Nope.
and just shakes. I don't mind
touch
that, but my grandma makes a bomb cranberry sauce.
Cinnamon water.
Yes, and a hell of a cinnamon water. She makes a fantastic fucking fucking cinnamon water. So big shout out to you, Grandma, and your cinnamon water. All right, well, it is Thanksgiving week. It's been a busy week and a busy couple of weeks here, not only for Barrels and Barrels, but we're getting into that holiday season. A lot of hustle and bustle, so we thank each and every one of you for taking your time to listen to us. You can find us.
With hold on. With me around here, and you lived here, Brandon.
Yes.
When I think Thanksgiving, I think Iron Bowl.
Iron Bowl, yeah. Iron Bowl Saturday. That's a big one. Football is a tradition.
Should be a good one.
Well, yeah. The Cadillac Williams is the interim coach, right, for the Tigers. So it'll be a very interesting one, so to speak, just because loss for Alabama just ruins any chance that they had to sneak in. But yeah, Iron Bowl Saturday, and also again football on Thursday, and also all the college rivalries on Friday. So that's what I think of is football and turkey. So thank you to every one of you who have listened, who have followed us. Again, we hit 500 followers on Instagram, and you can follow us at Barrels and Barrels Pod. We're also on Facebook, Barrels and Barrels Pod, Twitter, Barrels and Barrels, and YouTube, Barrels and Barrels Pod. You can email us, barrelsandbarrels@gmail.com. Michael, where do our viewers and listeners find you?
I'm on Instagram at BNB Burns. We get most of my action. Should see maybe some Twitter action with baseball rumors coming up.
Yeah.
So be sure to check us both out and all of us out on Twitter.
And you can find me at whiskey_weather on Instagram or WXSpinner89 on Twitter. As far as Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts, you can listen to us there as well as iHeartRadio Podcasts. Please rate us and review us. We would love that. We'll give you a shout out just like we did with Kristen Swilly earlier on. Look out for more bourbon and whiskey reviews here in the next coming weeks. We've got more of those Bushwood drinks to talk about. Short Barrel, I didn't get to shout them out yet, but we just got a bottle from Short Barrel Whiskey of their Toasted 94 proof. We'll have some more on that. A couple other things, especially Daniel's whiskey mystery whiskey sample here coming soon. Also, we'll have more free agency, and I think we're going to have a Get to Know You podcast coming up soon about each and every one of the members from Barrels and Barrels. Once again, for Michael Burns, I am Brandon Spinner. You can listen to us again, Spotify, Apple, as well as Google and iHeart. Please, please, please rate us, review us, and subscribe, not only on the podcast, but also on YouTube. I'm Brandon Spinner. That's Michael Burns. Thanks for listening. Happy Thanksgiving.
Let's go.